There's a verse in the Quran when Maryam's mother, she gave what was in her stomach as another. And another is an oath that you make with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you give something to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You do something for the sake of Allah. And she gave what was in her stomach to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what was in her womb. Now, she was an Aaronite. And the Aaronites are the ancestors of Harun alayhi salam, and the Aaronites had the honor of being the caretakers of the temples. And what she wanted was that her son would become a caretaker of the temple. When she gave birth to Maryam, what did she say? She said, it's not a male, it's a female. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responded, and Allah says, Allah knows what it was. Allah knows what she gave birth to. And then there's an expression, وَلَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنْثَى. And the male is not like the female. Now, when Muslims hear that, the Muslim men, they get that puffed up thing like the peacock. لَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنْثَى. We're not like women. Part of the problem is that men don't understand the ayah. Because the ayah was actually the opposite of what people think. لَيْسَ الذَّكَرْ الَّتِي تَمَنَّتْهُ مَرْيَمْ كَالْأُنْثَى الَّتِي وَضَعَتْ. The dhakar, the male that she desired, is not like the female that she gave birth to. Because Maryam was better than any male she could have given birth to. Because Maryam would give birth to Isa alayhi salam. But there's another thing about Maryam that's really important to note. And that is that Maryam is not just Isa. Isa is Ibn Maryam. See, people forget that. They think Maryam is Isa, that her sharaf, her honor is being the mother of Isa. But part of the honor of Isa is being the son of Maryam. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all through the Quran calls him Isa ibn Maryam. Isa, and it's one of the few times in the Arabic language you don't use the alif when you have an ibn between Baina Alamain. You say Muhammad ibn Abdullah and you just write ba noon. You don't write that alif. You look in the Quran and it's Isa ibn Maryam, and it has the alif that is retained. And part of the retention there is that Isa, his name is Isa, the son of Maryam. So Maryam was made a sign for people, and she was a qudwa and a uswa. And in her was an example for the people of qunut, which is obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That maqam is the maqam of prophets. She was given a maqam that prophets are given. And that is why many of our scholars, including Imam al-Bukhari, even Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, and several other scholars, and in the Maliki tradition, Ibn Abi Zayd al-Qarawani was absolutely convinced that Maryam was actually a prophet. Now the majority of ulama, and the dominant opinion is that prophets come from the men. That's something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to prophecy. In the same way that when angels, even though angels are neither male nor female, when they enter into a human form, they take the form of men, but they are not male or female. One of the things that Ja'far al-Sadiq said is that there were 4 masail, arba'u masail, izuha dhul. The dignity of that was still a type of dhul. And dhul is a situation that forces humility. Now one of them is al-bint walau Maryam. Ja'far al-Sadiq said, ad-dain walau daniq, al-bint walau Maryam, الوحشة ولو ليلة والسؤال ولو كيف الطريق. That those are types of situations that even though they're dignified, they still put you into a compromised situation. This is very important. The first was debt. There's nothing wrong with being in debt. The Prophet of Allah was in debt, but debt puts you into a compromised situation. When you go to your debtor, you're in a compromised situation whether you like it or not. Also, a woman, even if it was Maryam, that a woman by her nature, now one of the things that we know in sociology is that women unconsciously will smile at men when they see them, like if they're walking, they'll actually smile unconsciously. Part of the reason for that is to create a friendly atmosphere because of a fear that is inherent in being in a compromised position of weakness, which is physical weakness. And I'll tell you something about being tall, and I've noticed this because I have a lot of tall friends. Tall people do not have problems in airplanes where people are getting a little upset and things like that. Big people don't have problems because when they see how tall they are, they're nice and they're smiling and, go ahead. I'm sorry. And this is the truth. You see, and that's why Allah says He honored those who were given height in the dunya. It's part of having an honor to be tall because it puts you automatically in a situation in which the other person is compromised. Why? Because you're looking up and he's looking down. And that creates a superior-inferior situation, whether you like it or not. And most of us middle stature or short people, we don't like it. That's like Will Chamberlain. People always used to say to him, "How's the weather up there?" And he'd spit and say it's raining. Now, what are you going to do to Will Chamberlain if he spits on you? Because if you try to duke it out with him, you'd basically be hitting his kneecaps. So that's one of the things about human beings. I mean, we have these inherent psychological conditions, whether we like it or not, and we unwittingly go through life in these situations without really reflecting on why it's so. But I've seen many cases where somebody will be angry at somebody, and when the person stands up and they see how tall they are, they change completely. Oh, hey, don't worry about it, man. It's okay. But if he was a smaller person, he'd be puffing up and say, "What's your problem? Why are you doing that?" And this is why if you go to gyms, you will often notice that these people that are pumping weights vigorously are about 5'6". I mean, this is a phenomenon. And then a lot of these poor people have to wear tank tops in winter when it's freezing cold outside because they need to show that work that they've been doing in the gym. And they're just real human condition. People are put into compromises by their physical stature. Intellectually, people are put into compromises. Many women are intimidated by men naturally in the classroom. I believe it was called the Stone Study, when they did a study of the most successful women in the United States in terms of economics, in terms of politics, in terms of social endeavor. They found that the overwhelming majority had gone to all-girls schools, including Hillary Clinton, because they were in environments in which they were not intimidated by male students, because men get up and they'll shout out the answer and they're boisterous and they don't have, whereas women have natural adab. They have a type of courtesy where they'll be silent, they'll be more contained. It's natural, and that is actually a spiritual state. They're more modest generally. They tend to boast less than men. And this is one of the things that they found also in doing studies on men and women, that women would often actually do the opposite. They would underplay their achievements in interviews and things like that, and men would overplay them. Very common phenomenon. And so when you look at these type of situations, you have to understand we are dealing with very different phenomena when we're dealing with the male and the female. Laysa dhakaru kal untha is true. They're not the same. They are different. But in this case, the untha was much better than what she was desiring.